Hello and good evening in the UK and good afternoon in the USA. I'm Kell Ridley and this is Paranormal Verses. I'm here with my co-host Michael Koff, and today we're going to be introducing the most amazing psychic medium that I've ever had the privilege to know, and that's Craig Morris. He's from the UK as well, so I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself. And go on then, Craig, I'll let you go.
Thank you very much. It's well, thank you guys. It's Cal, Michael. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I know we've had this in the diary for some time now, so trying to get dates for it to work. It's been a little while, so it's come around really quickly. But now it's a pleasure to be with you all. So thank you both for having me. And to anybody and everybody that's watching, people that may know me, people that don't. Yes, I am a psychic spiritual medium. And I have the pleasure of touring up and down the country as well as overseas. And a big chunk of my work is, of course, demonstrating those abilities of connecting people to those on the other side, so people who've lost loved ones. And that can be done in front of live events, in theatres, in live audiences, should I say. Also, private readings. I do plenty. I do so many private readings, again, which I just love. And then another aspect of my work is teaching. So again, I'm very lucky that I get to, up and down the country, various spiritualist churches and centres that I get to teach in, and then schools overseas in Sweden and Switzerland, etc. So it's all good. So I pretty much get everywhere and anywhere, to be honest. But I love it. I absolutely love it. So for me, it's not necessarily just work. For me, it's just a way of life. It's what I do. It's what I have a passion for. So yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, for everybody who doesn't know, is I've known Craig for about 2 years, and I was sent to get a reading because my dad had passed away. And I'm very skeptical when it comes to mediums, but Craig completely blew my mind with the stuff that he told us. So it's like every opportunity I get, it's like if anybody wants to know anything like a decent medium, I'll put his name straight forward. And I also had the opportunity to go on a ghost hunt, an investigation with him this year in January. It was sub-zero temperatures and stupid me was wearing ripped jeans, freezing. But that time as well, he blew my mind. I'll just quickly give the story about what happened. Can you remember that, Craig, when Drew was asking you about that truck?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
I remember him asking about it, but yeah, I can't remember everything. Memory like a sieve.
Well, basically what happened, Craig didn't know where we were going beforehand because the location had been changed. So I didn't tell him where we were going, and it was a museum for military vehicles and stuff like that had been like used in World War One and Two. And the truck that he had actually like been standing next to, it didn't have anything that gave away what had happened in it. And he put his hand on it, even though he didn't need to do that, but Drew insisted. And he basically says he was getting like a feeling that something was happening around his eye or around his face, that he had been shot in the face. But Drew wasn't happy about that. And he says, I want to hear the exact words about what happened. And I'm standing there going, yeah, he's just said it. He's been shot in the face. The driver actually shot himself in the face and died. And Craig got that exactly right. So, yeah. I've still got to go through all the footage for that, but I've actually got that on camera.
Blimey, yeah, that was interesting hearing. That was cold, very, very
freezing cold.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, so how old were you when you first had your experience, or when you first found out that you were like obviously had these gifts?
So I was probably around the age of 6 or 7, in all honesty. So not every night, but some nights I'd get up during the evening, I'd go to the bathroom, and right opposite our bathroom in our old house was my brother's bedroom. And some nights I'd go in there and I just happened to look into my brother's bedroom, and I just see this lady stood next to him, think nothing of it, thinking that I was daydreaming or whatnot. And it actually turned out to be my nan. It lay dormant for years after that, to be honest. Just carried on growing up being a kid, thought nothing of it. And then, like I say, I used to just thought it was a dream. And then at the age of 19, my granddad passed, somebody that was very, very close. I was very, very close to. And the day that he passed, we were at the Manor Hospital in Warsaw, and he was in his own room, and he was sat there. Well, he was laying there, and he'd already passed. He'd made his transition, and all of a sudden, there was about 10 or 12 people in the room, family, etc. And all of a sudden, the room just went blissfully quiet. And that being said, I just happened to hear a faint whistle, but I knew it was from somebody who never had any teeth, and my granddad had no teeth.
Wow.
For as long as I know, anyway. Anyway, as I looked up, I just saw, the best way to describe it was just seeing this light, and my nan and granddad walking towards me and into the room, and I just heard my granddad's voice saying, "What are you all crying for? I'm all right now." And I heard my nan say, "It's my turn to look after him." And at that, they just turned around and went back. And pretty much from that point onwards, I got introduced to various people. Had my very first private reading with a lovely lady called Lorraine in Pensford. And she was the one that said, "I'll be doing this." And I'm like, okay, didn't really believe her, to be honest. But the things that she said to me on that day were quite something. And I wouldn't say I was skeptical, because I didn't really understand the whole subject matter at the time. And my neighbour, Alvin, who said, "What are you going to see this lady?" So I went on recommendation to see the Lorraine. On the way to her house, I stopped off at the cemetery where my nan and granddad were buried, or are buried, and just sat there, stood there, said, "Right, you know where I'm going to be, you know what time I'm going to be there, please come through, say hello, and just tell me that you're together and that you're okay." Just as I was leaving, a really old gravestone by the name of Edna Amy, who was the age of 19, passed in 1923, I believe, if I've got the facts right. And I just stood there and I said, "You have no connection to me whatsoever. If this is real, this is true, that we do go somewhere, you'll come through and say hello." Sat down with Lorraine. She said, "I've got your nan and granddad." Just before I carried on, she goes, "Who's Edna?" I thought, yeah, you've got me.
Wow.
That's where the journey started.
That is absolutely amazing. Another question then is, how do you sense or see spirit? What way do they come through to you?
So it's almost like it's like having a daydream, to be honest. So I tend to say to people that I see, hear, and feel the spirit world. And when I say I see them, I don't see them like I can see people stood directly in front of me. And the same with hearing. I can't hear them like I can hear your voice. It's almost like a subconscious mind, subconsciously on the mind. So you know when you're going in the car, or if you're on a walk, or you're just potting around the house, and all of a sudden you just think to yourself, that song keeps playing over and over in my mind. That's how I hear the spirit world. And when I say I see them, I tend to get, it's more of a knowing whether or not I've got a man or a lady in the relationship. And a lot of the time, I tend to see a lot of TV characters to describe various people that come through. But generally, when I say I see, hear, and feel, it's all in the mind, having a daydream. To be fair, that's pretty much probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. I remember that going back to what you said is you knew that this was meant to be for you. She told you that you'd be doing this sort of thing. You probably won't remember, but you were the one that told me that I'd be doing podcasts, and that was like a year before I even started doing them. And I was nope, not a hope in hell. And here I am. So what's been your most memorable experience about doing readings for people? Has anybody interesting ever came through, or has it ever been something that sticks in your mind?
There's loads, to be honest. There's probably loads that I can choose from, right from the very first sitting that I ever gave. Lots of people who will come and see me, whether it's for a private reading or if it's for or a demonstration in a church or a theatre, etc. Somewhere down the line, they come back to me and say, "I don't know if you remember, but you gave me a reading 2 years ago or 3-4 years ago, however long it was." And politely, I have to say, "I'm really sorry, but I don't." And most of the time, or a lot of the time, if not all, lots of people are like, "No, we get it. You speak to that many people."
Yeah.
But there are certain sittings that do stick into my mind. And one of them is the very first reading that I ever gave to a lady at Stafford Church on my very first workshop. So that sticks out to my mind because, of course, as far as I was concerned and aware, it was the very first connection that I ever made in that way to deliver the evidence to a loved one from a loved one. But I'm trying to think, blimey. I think you know, a lot of people don't always realise the impact that this can have on people's lives. And I think the one in particular that really would stand out the most, for hopefully the right reasons, is again, there's loads I could choose from, but this one in particular. A lady turned up to my house and for a private reading. Anyway, as we were going, as we started, the first person that connected was a friend of hers. She passed relatively young, and all that evidence came through. The story was told, and all I heard was, "It's not your time yet. It's not your time." But there was no feeling with it. So the only way I can explain that to people is, whenever I get something, when I get a piece of evidence, or I see a piece of evidence, there's what I would call substance to it. So there's something that I would follow up with to be able to say, I'm seeing this, so I know I need to tell you this. I didn't get that substance. Anyway, carried on. Her parents came through, which was lovely. And it was almost that feeling of, thank goodness for that from her, because that's who she wanted to hear from. And then to finish off the reading, her friend stepped back in with that same message, those same words, "It's not your time yet." Anyway, at the end of it, at the time, I used to just take deposits and people paid the rest of it on the day. So just as she was leaving, she said, "Right, oh, I won't need this now. There you go." She just handed me this envelope, thinking, and I thought it was the rest of the money. So I went to go and get it out. And she goes, "Oh, no, don't open it yet." So I thought, okay, are you trying to catch me out on this and sort of get away from not paying that fee, or whatever it is? Anyway, thought nothing of it. And just as she got to the door, was about to go, I said, I was about to say goodbye. She went, "Oh, I owe." She goes, "What do I owe you?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You've given it to her." She goes, "No, I don't need that." She goes, "What? How much more money do I owe you?" And then anyway, she handed me that and she'd gone. So I went back into the kitchen to go and get this envelope as quick as a flash to open it. And all of a sudden, as I opened it, it was a suicide note.
Oh my God.
She planned to go, and after that sitting, from what I can gather, she planned, well, it's what I know, she planned to go and take her own life. And I was so pleased that she said to me that she wouldn't need it anymore. And I know to this day that she's still with us, because every so often I get a contact from her, just to say, just to let you know I'm checking in, things are all good and all that sort of things. She didn't ask for a reading, because I think it's almost the feeling that, you know what, she's living her life, which is what part of the message was on the day for her. So for me, the fact that we can have that impact on people, and we don't always realise it, I think that's one of the most powerful messages and sittings that I've ever been able to be a part of, to be fair.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty amazing. But that's pretty scary at the same time, thinking about that. But,
it is, because, you know, there are people that will come along, and when I teach, I always teach my students, just be honest. You know, there's nothing that's coming through. I had it. When did I have it? A little while ago. There was a gentleman I was reading for from somewhere overseas, and it just didn't feel as though it was working. Nothing to do with him, you know, or anything like that, but it just didn't feel right. And you know, the whole purpose, and I kind of nicked this concept off John Edward in a way, but the whole purpose of when you go and see a medium is that you should feel better when you leave than when you first arrived. You know, so if you're going to go and see a medium and you're not being, I'm not going to say wowed, but if you're not going to feel that, you know what, I needed that. If you're not going to have that sense of feeling of that, if you like, then you know, you kind of have to, and sometimes you may not have that impact straight away. It may not be until, you know, because lots of people go and see a medium and they want specific people or a specific person, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But you know, at times, and this again, my point there is that to my students is always be honest, because you know what, if that person in front of you isn't in a great place emotionally, you know, you can often probably do more damage, and that's why you've got to be very, very honest. So it can be, absolutely, but also, you know, we have to be responsible in this fact that when things like that maybe do happen, or you've got somebody in that mindset, you know, you have to kind of politely say, you know, is it that we are the right person that you need to be talking to, or is it somebody that maybe, you know, of another professional capacity? You know, so there are things we have to be aware of as well, you know. So I know it can be, you know, a sensitive subject, but it's there.
Wow. I've just noticed we've got a question in the comments from Matt. I always get the surname wrong. Matt Atkinson. Hi, Craig. Have you ever had any spirit visitations after giving people a reading?
Have I? A lot of the time I have, but from my own loved ones, if you like, or friends, family that I'm connected to. There have been times where I have been reading for somebody, and then somebody else is coming through who I think is for the person that I'm reading for. And the person I'm reading for saying, no, sorry, Craig, don't get it, don't understand that. But I'm Adam, and I know that I've got that person. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll take that person back. And then before you know it, I'm sat with my next sitter, and boom, it's for that person that's in front of me. So generally, in that respect, I have, but I don't tend to get anything or anyone, you know, that I don't know of after a sitting, because again, I just look at it like this, that, you know, if I was to read for either of you guys or anybody that's watching tonight, you know, your loved ones don't want to hang around with me. They don't know me. You know, they want to come back home with you. That's what we do. So yeah, but not really, to be fair.
Yeah. Have you ever had like anything negative happen, or a spiritual attack or a psychic attack or anything like that?
No. Again, I think I've often, you know, I have often heard people and fellow mediums and psychics talk about those attacks. You know, for me, it's just the way I look at it is, you know, we talk about a psychic attack, or we talk about, you know, an attack as such. But for me, I kind of put myself into the mindset that, you know what my loved ones are around me. Why would they allow anything like that to happen? You know, yeah. They're going to be there. They're going to look. You know, they look after me on this side of life. So why would it be any different from that side of life? So no, not at all.
Yeah. Not. I'm hogging all the questions. Not Michael. Have you got any questions?
I do have some. One is, I was reading in your bio, you talked about going to school for your gift. What was that like? Like, was it coursework, or just, can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's great because, you know, there are a few people that have asked me questions about that, but not loads, so it's nice. Yeah, so my very first workshop. So we have what we call workshops, seminars, circles. So the very first workshop I ever participated in was with a minister, a tutor from the Arthur Findlay College at Stansted, which is probably, in my eyes, probably one of the most prestigious schools of psychic and mediumship phenomena. And there are a part of the Spiritualist National Union. They have some wonderful tutors down there. They really do, and some great courses to offer as well. And they have there's a centre that they're affiliated with called the Barbanel Centre. When I went there, it was known as the Arthur Findlay Centre. So I went there for a weekend seminar, and I'd actually, at the time, I was a flight attendant. I was cabin crew, so I actually called in sick for a couple of those days, and I was paying £70 for a 2-day seminar. And I remember getting onto the motorway heading up to Stafford, which wasn't far from where I was living at the time, 15-20 minutes. And I just stood, I was in the car, sorry, and I was driving, and I just thought, am I just wasting my time and money here? I've called in sick for work, and I called my auntie, and she said to me, she goes, if you get there, and my auntie Julie, and she goes, if you get there and you don't like it, you can always come back. But I did it. I went, and yeah, that's where I made my first link to the spirit world. And then from there, I did what we call an awareness group, which was an initial 12-week course. And what that taught us was the basic awareness of what our work. So talking on the psychic faculty of our work as well as the mediumship. So when we talk of psychic, of course, I'm sure there are lots of people out there that, of course, know the difference, but there may be some that don't. So psychic is, of course, where we are as the reader connecting to your energy as the sitter. Mediumship is, of course, where we're connecting to the spirit world and giving you the evidence of survival after the physical death of a loved one. So I did that course, and then I was invited into a weekly circle with a wonderful medium and tutor called Janette Abbott. And what that taught us, that was the foundation of our work. So week in, week out, we turn up. We'd have a meditation, sit in the power. We would then have various exercises given to us to help us strengthen not only the link to the spirit world, but to have more of an awareness of the spirit world and how we could and how we were able to deliver the evidence and the understanding of it, basically. So, and that's what we do. There are other courses, and there was something else that I did, which was called the Exponents course. It was called the West Midlands Exponents course, which was run by Janette Abbott and a friend of ours, Misha. So between the two of them, every week, and it was a 3-year course. So again, it would be more of the basics in the first year, as well as the history of spiritualism, where it started and things like that. But then we would then go more into, which of course is where the interesting parts were, of course. And we talk about the, what's the word I'm after? The awareness of the psychic, again, the awareness of the mediumship. And then we would go out in pairs or groups of 3 to go and serve spiritualist churches and centres, again, for the foundation of our work. So yeah, and it's great because there's always something going on. There's always something happening. So that's where it started.
Cool.
Wow.
So in being medium, do you consider medium like channeling? Because I know some people call like talking to other races or beings in the stars channeling. But to me, it seems like it's just another branch of mediumship. Do you feel that as well, or do you feel like they're two totally different?
When you talk of, for me, mediumship is where we as the medium, we're connecting to those on the other side, and we're giving evidence of life after physical death, that our loved ones do continue into the spirit world. So, I'm sure there are similarities there, of course. But, I think in some ways as well, we can overthink things in some aspects as well. I think when we overthink them, we tend to make them a little bit more, what's the word I'm after? A little bit more. With overthinking, we tend to, think, well, is it this? Is it that? And it's great to have questions, but for me, it's mediumship is one of the most natural. For me, is one of the most natural abilities to have, and I believe that everybody has the ability to be aware of energy. I'm not saying everybody could be a medium or anybody could be a medium, but I do believe that everybody has the ability to become aware of when their loved ones are nearby, or and if they want to say hello. It's just about being aware a lot of the time. So I'd say the similarities, but yeah, for me, mediumship is, I just love it.
Brilliant. We've got another question from Matt. It says, Craig, does the spirit world compare to the earth plane? Sorry, how does the spirit world compare to the earth plane?
I've no idea, is the honest answer. It's probably the simplest and quickest answer I give. And the reason for that, there, Matt, is purely because I've never been to the spirit world. And the way I tend to describe that and talk about that is years ago, I remember being asked a question and somebody said to me, well, what's the spirit world like? I've no idea. And I tend to use a lot of analogies in my teaching and when I'm being interviewed and things like that. And one of the analogies that I used is my background is travel, of course, being cabin crew, as well as working for holiday firms. And I used to sell holidays to people all over the world, America, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, and there will be companies that I'd speak to on a regular basis, and and I often say to people, you know what, I've never been to Florida, but at the time I hadn't, and I said, I've never been there, but I can sell you a holiday to Florida, not a problem, because I know where to go to get the facts. I know where to go to say, right, you're going to love it because look at that hotel, it's amazing. Experiences, but because I've never been there myself, I've literally no idea. And you know what? I remember asking the spirit world, well, what do you do? Where are you? And all I got the feeling was, we're here, we're around. So we can't reach out and touch them and say hello to them and feel them, but we know that they're around.
Yeah.
So if I'm completely honest, I still stick by what I'm saying. I've no idea. However, that being said, I don't think there's a massive difference. I think it's just the fact that, of course, we're in this materialistic world and they're not, to be fair. So yeah, I kind of hope that helps in some way or answers that in some way. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually have an interesting question for you that I've always wanted to ask a medium. How do you keep your friends in relationships? Because I know that's got to become an issue.
It can do. You mean you're on about like with me with relationships and
right?
Yeah. So do you know what? It's just about having the right people around you. In complete honesty, those I'm very, very lucky that the people, family and friends that I have around me are understanding. I've got, for example, my cousin Ashley. He's probably the only way I can describe it. He's like the older brother I've never had. And funnily enough, I was only thinking about him like the last couple of days. But he knows, I know he has a busy life. He knows I have a busy life, and certainly more so now that I'm getting out a lot more and I'm up and down the country and overseas. And also, it's the same with my friends. They'll message me, and I have to say I'm really sorry for late replying, but I've been on the road or I've just got back from here. So it's just really more so about people having an understanding. My husband, to be fair, I'll go away, I'll come back home, and the first question that he usually asks me is, within an hour of being back home, he's like, when do you go away again? Because he likes his own space and all of that sort of thing. But, the last 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, I've literally been all over. I've been up to the northeast. I've been to the southwest, the eastern western part of the UK, should I say. And I've just been over in the Midlands the last couple of days. So, it's really just about them having an understanding. However, that being said, as a medium, it's also up to us to have discipline as well. And I have been a bit of a nightmare for that, in all honesty. So, and I'm very lucky that I have, and I'm surrounded by other wonderful mediums that have been doing this longer than I've been alive in some cases. So I listen to their story and their history, and they're like, make sure you don't do this, make sure you do that. So I'm listening to them, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to remember that. So what I tend to do now in my diary, I mark off the weekends and the times that I want off. I also mark off annual leave that Wayne has, so that we have holidays together, and like birthdays and anniversaries within the family. Because I'm like, do you know what? If they are going to do something, that's when it's going to be. So I want to make sure I'm there. So, and one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a medium is actually learning to say no to people. And you don't like to say no to people because of what is the subject matter of what we do. I so hate, and I do use that. I don't often use that word, but I am now, because I do hate letting, or the feeling of letting people down. But at the same time, I need to live my life as well, because just like everybody else, if you have a normal 9-to-5 job, you have your weekends off, you want your holidays and stuff. It's the same with us. We still want that time off. So it's kind of like a factor of different things, really. But one of the main things is learning to say no and self-discipline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you ever get people coming up to you and saying, oh, like when they find out that you're a medium, like, oh, tell us me future, or stupid stuff like that.
One of the best lines I ever had was, so the first thing is I often tell whenever I go on holiday. So and Kell, you'll know Simon. So for years, me and Simon, one of my best friends, we used to go away. This was before I was married, and even actually as I met Wayne. But we used to go away every year just before Christmas with our friends from the northeast. And I'd say to dude Simon, I'd say, right, just the usual rules apply. If anybody asks what I do, you tell them what you do. Nothing. Joking in case he's watching. But if anybody asks what I do, I just threw something. Most of the time, I used to tell people I was a pilot, to be honest, because I always had that ambition of flying an aeroplane one day as a commercial pilot. So, and I've got enough knowledge to be able to waffle my way through that. So that's quite often what I did. But one of the biggest questions when people do find out is, I remember one instance, they were like, "What, really?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Okay, well, I'll tell you where it was. I think it was, I was out with my uncle Paul, and we were over in Bewdley, in sort of West Midlands way, and we were out with some other friends, Andy, Jules, and Jack, and everybody, and we were having a drink, and we were in Wetherspoons, and this group of lads, a bit of a stag do, came in, and they'd had a few, and one came over to us, and we were chatting away. And somehow we got onto the subject of who does what for a living. And Andy straight away thought, I've got this here. He went, I'll tell you what, lads, about 12 of them. He said, I'll tell you what, guys. He went, if you can guess what he does, pointing to me, if you can guess what he does for a living, I'll buy you all a drink as well as a shot each. Not a problem. And they were like, okay. So they initially had 3 goes, didn't get it. He said, go on, I'll give you another 2 goes. I'm that confident you won't get it. They found out, and the one guy said to me, he goes, do you really? And I went, yeah. So he got onto my website, Googled me and stuff, found out. And he turned around and said, so can I ask? He said, can you see what's going on around me? I went, no, not really. He said, am I going to die? And I went, yeah. And he just straight away, he went as white as a ghost, and he just shut up straight away. He went, am I really? I said, come on. First of all, I said, we've all had a drink. I said, I'm not going to be doing you any sort of readings tonight. I said, it's not the time or place. I went, but let's face it, we're all going to go at some point, aren't we? I said, it's one thing that's inevitable for all of us. So some people might be saying or wanting to give me a bit of a virtual slap for that. But I like to put a bit of humour into my work as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. We've got another message, a comment from Matt. Do you believe that our souls are eternal?
Good question. I do in some way, yeah. And I want to say yes, I do. But, the question I then have in my mind is when we pass and we talk about going to our loved ones over the spirit world, do we all just live there eternally? Do we stay in the same place? Do we do the same thing? Or is it that when we go into that world that we then evolve and go to another level? Do you know what I mean? So I'm open to all of these things, and I'll put it out there. I don't know all the answers. I can only give you what my thoughts are on it based on experiences, or even not even just experiences, but based on other conversations that I've had with people, But I'd like to think they are, but at the same time, who knows? We'll find out, won't we? One day, I'm sure.
Yeah, we certainly will.
Matt is also asking, so the spirits that you communicate with don't give you any clues as to what it's like on the other side?
Not really, no. Because as a medium, it's our job, our role, if you like, is to talk about the evidence of that. So when somebody comes to sit in front of me for a private reading, they, of course, want the evidence that their loved ones are around. So, and the way that we do that, quite simply, is we talk about that, the person that's passed, we talk about their life, we talk about, I tend to start off by saying, I'm aware of a gentleman who feels like your father or whoever it might be, grandfather. I feel as though this is how they passed, etc. Does that make sense? So that they understand straight away who it is. But then I go down the line of, their personality, where they lived, where they worked, who they lived with, who they're with in the spirit world, memories of those other people that they have in the spirit world, you know, things that might be happening around you as they sit now, you know. So and you know, in the past I've sat there, and when I've meditated, as I've gone into that meditation, I've set the intention, I've also put the question in there: what happens when we die? Where do we go? What's the spirit world like? And you know, and me and Billy Cook, a wonderful friend and medium, we've had the conversation many times, and we've been told the same thing. Well, right now, we don't need to really worry about it. It's not that we don't care, but we don't really need to worry about it right now because we're living in this life. Yeah. It's you know, at the end of the day, we've got to live our life on this side in the physical world, because I believe that whatever we do on this side of life, lessons that we learn, we'll take with us to that side of life, and somehow we'll use those faculties, we'll use you know, those lessons in whatever way. I don't know what way it might be, but we'll go over there with them. But yeah, so no, also I ever get a sense. I tell you what, there was one time I meditated. I was at home and I was just getting myself prepared for a demonstration in Coventry. Sitting, and as I sat there, within a few minutes, I just felt as though, even though I knew I was sat in the chair still, I just felt as though I was literally like lifted out of my chair, out of my seat, and I just walked through this. There was like a row of conifer trees, and I just stepped out and I stepped into a road. And I looked either way, and it's almost as though, it's a bit like, I suppose, what you see in movies, you know, especially in the States, where you look so far down that way and you can see for miles, and the same the other way. I crossed over the way, and there was a fence. As I say, that there was a fence that you could either climb over, through, or under. But all of a sudden, as I stood there was a white house that I saw, but I just felt so comfortable. I felt so peaceful. I felt blissful. In all honesty, it's a bit like Hakuna Matata, no worries. That's how I felt. That's the only way I can describe it. And all of a sudden, remember when I said earlier on, I heard a whistle, a faint whistle with my granddad. I heard it again. And all of a sudden I turned and I looked, and I saw my nan and my granddad walking towards me, and they looked impeccable. My nan was beautifully dressed, just looked stunning. My granddad was just he was granddad, how I remembered him. And all of a sudden, they never said anything. As they were walking up, my granddad just pointed in the opposite direction to say, look, basically. And as I looked the other way, a friend of mine who'd passed, Colin, he was walking down, and again he was back in his full smartly, very, very smartly dressed, and he came to us, and then literally they just stood there. No words were exchanged, but it was emotions, it was feelings, and knowing that, you know what, you're doing all right, and this is a beautiful place, and one day this is where we'll all be at some point. So, and that was it. I came back. So that's the only inkling I've ever had, in all honesty.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. We've got a comment of Irene. She says, Craig, do you feel that COVID has increased paranormal activity more? She found out that that she's got more work than ever and less time to recover.
I think a part of that, you know, is just the initial part of it is that I think since the lockdowns and stuff all over the world, of course, lots of people have been wanting to go and experience a lot more things in life, realising, you know, before lockdown, they were kind of, you know, and I know people that have said the same to me, where they were sort of not stuck in a rut, but they were just in the same routine. You know, they were going to work, they were looking forward to a holiday a year and things like that, and they weren't really doing anything. As soon as lockdown happened, people realised, you know, you realised what you realised what you had. What's the saying? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I think through the lockdown, people realised that, you see. So coming out of the lockdown, people were like, hang on, we need to go and you know, explore more. And I think that's probably part of the reason. And also, of course, not forgetting, through the lockdown, there were, and I had a friend of mine, Steve Holbrook, we were chatting about this after the lockdown, and I was saying to him, the thing is, when we've gone online live and we've done readings and we've done sittings, we've done workshops, Zooms and all that sort of stuff, people have come on from all over the place and thought, hang on a second, you just mentioned my hometown. And then also you get people contacting you saying, Craig, did you say there was a spiritualist church in Stoke or wherever it was? Yeah, that's right, in that area there. Well, I didn't know that. Do you know what? I'm going to go. So all of a sudden, there's now been an influx in lots of churches, or different centres, because people are like starting to realise that these things do happen. And then again, I think it will be the same in the paranormal world. I've done so many paranormal events, and I've chosen not to host anymore just because it's personal preference. I've been there, I've done that now. So yeah, I think it certainly has in some way.
Oh, there's another one here from Matt. He says, Craig, can you always channel spirit, or do you ever get occasions where they refuse to come through?
I wouldn't say that they refuse to come through, because I often say, why would your loved ones not want to talk to you? Why would they not want to come through? But it could be for different reasons, that the person that's sitting in front of you may not be ready, for one. They may not be ready and in the place for that message. I may not be the medium to deliver that message to the sitter that's in front of me. So for all different reasons, but where was I? So again, there was two ladies who come to see me for a private reading. One lady I'd already read for 12, 18 months before, maybe a bit longer actually. And anyway, so we were sat there and we were chatting away. And the lady who I'd not read for before, she sat with me first, gave the reading, it was lovely. She had to go. And then the other lady that I had read for before sat in front of me. And I said, right, I already know your dad's in the spirit world because he's come through before. As we were chatting away and talking, I gave a couple of things, and literally 10 minutes in, I just said to her, I said, that's it. I literally feel as though there's nothing else that's there. I said, your dad's here because he's told me to say this, this, and this, and you're aware of that and you validated it, but I just don't think there's anything. I said, actually, I'm very much aware there's nothing else to give to you. And at the end of it, I just said to her, I said, I'll go and put the kettle on, we'll have a chin wag, and that's it. I said, because you're here anyway. And she goes, it's funny that is, because when I got here this morning with my mate, she goes, just before we got through the door, she said, I'd said to her, she goes, I just don't feel like I need a sitting. Everything in life is good. I feel okay. And I said to her, well, you've talked yourself out of a message then, haven't you? But yeah, so I think there are times also as well, the thing to remember is that sometimes people, when they go and see a medium, even when it's a live event, people get, when they're sat there, they go with what I call their A-listers, moms, dads, nans, granddads, aunts, uncles, etc. But there are times where people will come through that they least expect, and potentially people that they don't want to hear from. I was in Burnham-on-Sea last year. As I was there, said to put out this information, and I always say, listen, if somebody comes through and you're like, yeah, I understand who that is, but I don't want to talk to them, tell me. And this was no different that night. And this lady put her hand up. She goes, Craig, I understand exactly who you've got. It's my mother-in-law. I didn't like her whilst she was here, and I don't like her now. You can send her back. So it happens as well on that case. But as I said earlier on, there was a gentleman I read for recently, and it wasn't going for me. So, there are occasions where some people will come through and that potentially the sitter doesn't understand what I'm saying. So I'm like, okay, we'll leave it there. And then some weeks later or however long that, I might get a message saying, actually, Craig, I've got to tell you what you said was correct. So can I rebook come and see you by gaining that knowledge? So yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember when we were on that investigation in January, you told us about somebody that was coming through, somebody that had took their own life. And the way you described how he done it, and I'm like, haven't got a clue who that is. And then it wasn't until like a few days later that I remembered it was someone I used to work with. So yeah, it's like, so you should always take it, and then like it'll always come to you.
Oh, absolutely. You just never know who it is that's going to pop in and say hello. You just never know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you mentioned John Edward. I went and did a event where I was in the audience watching him.
Yeah.
And it would drive me nuts because he would say, I have so-and-so for you. And the people would constantly say no. And John Edwards' attitude is, well, I can't move on until you acknowledge this or deliver this. Does that happen to you, or how do you handle that when someone absolutely is like, no, this isn't for me, and you're like, I know it is?
I just move on. Because this is just from my perspective. Sometimes if you've got, if you're doing a demonstration, you've got 100, 200 people in front of you, if not more, and you're giving some evidence about something that's coming through, and that person's saying to you, no, don't understand, but you're getting the inkling of, okay, you do, but you don't want to say it. You kind of have to respect that in a way. You have to be able to because if you're going to throw it down their throats by saying, no, you do, then you have to, there's just, like I say, there's that thing about being diplomatic in what we do, and I think there's what you have to do is, and what I tend to do is I just say, well, then okay, that's fine. My apologies. I just felt if it isn't for you, then it must be something that's connected to you. We just remember I'm saying it, because if I get it and they're saying no, the first thing I tend to do is, does anybody else then understand what I'm saying? But then if nobody does, then I'll say, right, well, just remember I'm saying it, but I'll say thank you and I'll move on, because you have to have respect for that person as well. And it happened, there was a little, I probably wouldn't do it so much now if I'm honest, but sometimes it does happen where the spirit world are adamant that they want to get that message through. And I was in Bedworth a few years ago now. It's before the lockdown. I was in this theatre doing a demonstration and it was one of them nights that was like pulling teeth, but hey, we did it and we got through. And as I was working, I turned around, I said, I've got a man here, described him and everything. I said, and I feel as though I'm over here. This is where I need to be. Said a few things, nobody would take him. So I was like, okay, I'll carry on. So I went to go and move away. At that, I said, I'm really sorry, but he's not going anywhere. He's adamant. And I said something else. And then all of a sudden, there was these two girls that were together. And the one girl got her mate's arm and put it up for her. And anyway, she goes, yeah, I think I do. So when I hear, I think I do, that then tells me as the medium, have I misinterpreted something? Have I said something wrong? So I then say, tell me what I've said that's wrong then, or what don't you understand? And she goes, well, I understand it all. So I said, well, why do you want to put your hand up? But then I learned from that experience. I mean, she was absolutely fine and she couldn't be any more apologetic. But because I always say to people, if you understand, tell me. If you don't want the message, then tell me. Don't leave me standing here, because I can make myself look like an idiot without your help in doing that, basically. So that's probably the way I would handle that. So I'd offer it out to somebody else if they didn't understand. If that person, and there's that feeling or inkling that, no, that's where it should be, just remember I'm saying it, and then I'll just move on. Because you don't want them feeling awkward and anybody else in the congregation feeling awkward either. So I'd just move on.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
How do you deal with like skeptics and stuff like that? Like people, because they try to say that mediums are fake and stuff like that. How do you deal with people like that?
I don't really. At the end of the day, if people think what I do is rubbish, then that's fine. We have to. One thing that we have to be fair on is that not everybody's going to believe, and that's absolutely fine. And I've got family and friends that think what I do is a load of rubbish. That's absolutely fine. I certainly don't. I wouldn't go and sit there and tell them anything and say to prove the point. I'd say, well, I've got nothing to tell you. And there are people that I've had conversations like that with, but I wouldn't go in there saying, oh, you've got to believe because it's what I do. Not really. Yeah. You might turn around and say, I'm an airline pilot, it's absolutely safe to fly on my aeroplane. It might be, but I'm still not getting on that aeroplane because I'm petrified of flying and I'd only be stuck in that metal tube. So everybody has their own thing. But at the end of the day, a lot of the time I actually enjoy having a conversation with a skeptic, because they generally bring forward some good points, and I'm like, actually, that's a good way of looking at that, or that's a good question, that is. I'm going to think about that. So I actually don't mind talking to them, So, and I love it even more so when I'm doing a den, an event, and that happens. And I start off talking to the lady, but then the gentleman, I give off, I give some evidence, and I'm like, hang on, you were dragged here tonight, weren't you? Yeah, I was. But do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I do. And there's been times where that has happened, and they're just like, and it happened last year at a venue in the Midlands, and this gentleman came up to me and he shook my hand. He goes, I'm going to say thanks. Perfect example. That's the one I was trying to think of. I knew there was one. So I was, and I wrote about this in my book, I did a demonstration in Landywood at a snooker club. And as I was working, there was a friend of mine from school, Jodie. She was sat there, and as I started talking about this gentleman that was coming through, she put her hand up and she went, Craig, she goes, I think you're with me. So I said, okay, fair enough. And she said, but it's my granddad. She goes, but I didn't meet him. He died before I was born. Now, her mum was working behind the bar, and her dad, at the time, he was in the lounge area having drinks with his mates, well, and fellow mates of mine as well. So I went in and I said to him, and he's a lifelong friend of our family, grew up with my mum and my aunties and uncles, and I said to him, come on then. And I just said, right, at any point, Kev, you can tell me to shut up, and I promise you I will do. I said what I said, and he went, nah, just leave it like that. So I did, respected it, stopped it, had the break at that point, and I went and saw him. I said, listen, if I haven't offended you, I'm really sorry. And at that, he said to his wife, turn the lights on in the private room, went into this other private room. I thought he was going to slap me, to be honest. That's what I thought. He went, sit down. So I sat down, and he went, how did you know that? I went, what do you mean? He went, how did you know what you said to me in there? He went, because nobody knows what you said to me. He said, there was a pact between me and my old man, my dad, before he passed. And he said, my mum didn't know. Corinne, my wife, didn't know. And he said, and certainly Jodie didn't know. He said, so how do you know? I went, because your dad told me. And he went, okay. He said, no, you know me. He said, I don't believe in any of this at all. He said, but you couldn't have known that. I went, that's fine. And he went, right, we'll say no more of the matter. I went, absolutely not. Just as we got to the door to walk out the room, he opened it, he closed it, and he went, and he just turned around, and I'll never forget this for as long as I live. He went, but is he all right, though? Is the old man okay? And I went, he's all right, he's sound. He went, that's all I need to know. And that was it. That's all it was. But that, again, you asked me earlier on, Kel, what about, a sitting that stands out of mind? That it wasn't really a sitting, but that's one of the things. And he was very much that skeptic, but was open to it. So I suppose it's just having the right mindset and the right intention and attitude towards it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Just noticed another one there from Matt. He says, hi, Craig. Should we all fear death or not?
Not at all. There's nothing to be afraid. I mean, somebody else asked me this recently. I had to turn around and I said, how I get there doesn't really throw me, doesn't really make me, I don't really want to think about how I'm going to get there. Mm-hmm. But absolutely not. For me, it's the best way to describe it, I suppose, is in my book. I describe it as the holiday analogy. When somebody passes, and you do that celebration of life, their funeral. It's like dropping them off at the airport. You'll see them through security. You'll wave them off. You're watching them take off. Then they land. They get to the other end. They make a phone call, and which is where the medium comes in. They make that phone call. They come through to say, listen, we've arrived. We're okay. You'll never guess who I bumped into. You're going to love it when you're here, by the way, although it's not for some time yet. But when your time comes, you're going to love it, and I'll be waiting at the arrival gate for you as well. So no, there's no, for me, definitely don't fear death. If anything, talk about it to take away that fear, because there's so much overthinking to be done with it. As soon as you start talking about death, people think, oh, no, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. But why? You'll talk about a holiday that's coming up, or you'll talk about a new job that you're starting. You'll talk about the rough time that you're going through in life, or, other things. Mm-hmm. Or I've got to put my car in the garage. It's going to cost me thousands. You'll talk about that. So why not talk about this? Why not talk about death? Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And surely by talking about it, okay, when the time comes for any of us, it's still not going to be great, because you want that physical, you want the physicality, you want the physical touch, you want to be able to pick up your phone and say hello and everything, which we know won't happen.
Yeah.
However, by talking about it, there'll be more of a knowing, there'll be more of an awareness. It's like, okay, well, this is okay, because you know what, this person, you know, a friend of mine, she was talking to me last night about somebody that she'd helped make the transition, and that lady that did make her transition, she had one wish, and my friend helped for that to happen, and that lady went back home that night. She went to sleep and she never woke up. Now, how beautiful is that? Absolutely. She got to see her son get married, which is what she wanted. That was her final wish. She went, I just want to see my son get married and I'll be happy, because I can die a happy woman. She watched her son get married. She went home that night and she went to sleep. How beautiful. Wow. To some people, it's sad, but in other cases, she got her wish.
Yeah.
So let's talk about death and let's not be afraid of it, you know. And when people say, what do you mean talk about it? Well, what do you think is going to happen when we die? What do you know, how do you want to celebrate your life? Let's talk about those things and make it, you know, there and real.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I must admit, I don't fear death. I've got a tattoo on my arm that says "Don't fear the Reaper." So that was just like my homage to like not being scared to die. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was just also I was going to ask you about you've toured with some like quite well known people, haven't you?
Yes. Of course. I mean, one of the biggest names that I had the pleasure of working with, of course, was Colin Fry. You know, so some people in the States may not know Colin. He visited the States, and there were talks of him working out there. And I think there were a couple of things he did out there, but most of his work took him all over the UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and you know, that's for him. But yeah, and through Colin, you know, I got to know Derek Acorah personally. He was both wonderful gentlemen. And then in this country, following that, you know, I mean, other people that I've had the pleasure of working with, Billy Cook. Yeah. You know, he's another wonderful medium. He's toured up and down the country. He's worked all over Europe. He's had his own TV show and stuff. Gordon Smith. You know, so I've been very, very lucky with the big named mediums, and you know, that I've had the pleasure of becoming friends with and worked with as well. So, you know, I have been very lucky, and again, it's through them where, you know, I've sat and, you know, talked to them. And again, I mentioned Stephen Holbrook earlier on. So some people in the UK will know who he is. I don't know if you will in the States. I don't think he's done anything in the States, if I'm honest. But oh, there we go, Simon. Lots of lovely. I
was wondering when he was going to come in.
Oh, we did as well. You're late, dude. No, but yeah, and Steve, you know, Steve and Rob, his manager, they only live like 25 minutes from our house where we live in Yorkshire, and it's through, you know, a few times, 2 or 3 times through the year, they'll come here. We'll meet up and go out, but they'll come here, they'll stay over, and you know what? We'll just sit there and talk, and yet we'll talk about mediumship. But you know, because of Steve, and the same with Billy and Tim and Janette, Gordon, and the same with Colin and Derek when they were here, Tony, loads of people I can mention. You know, having them had those experiences that they've had so far in their life. And like I say, and Steve, for example, you know, he's been doing this work probably for just over 40 years or 40 odd years. He's been doing it longer than I've been alive, you know, and to sit down with somebody of that caliber who has those experiences, again, like Billy, all of them, to sit down with people like that and listen to their stories, but their experiences, and say, you know, Craig, you need to try this, or, you know, be wary of that. Their lessons and their not lessons, but conversations and things I'm going to carry with me for as long as I do this. And I think I genuinely say that every step along the journey, right from the circle that I first started in, Tim and Janette taking me under their wing, then Colin, Billy, all these other wonderful mediums that have all played a part in shaping the medium that I am today. They've all played a part, whether or not it's been through a class or a workshop, a conversation, sharing the platform. I've learned something from all of them. So, I'll be forever thankful and forever grateful.
I've got one of your books. Are you planning on doing any others?
It's in progress as we speak. Yeah,
brilliant.
It's started. So it'll be it'll be 2 years this year since the release of my first book. But then I was talking to Simon about it the other day because he was so again, people that haven't met Simon before, it was between me and him. He edited a lot of the book, and then we sent it to the publisher, who then did the final bits for us. But yeah, so we were talking about, I said, do I leave it till 5 years or do I start writing it now? He said, start writing it now. And honestly, when I'm out on the road and things happen, I have to get my phone out because I have to go into the notes page and say, right, talk about this. And the times I've gone to bed at stupid o'clock at night, I'm like, hang on, I need to write that in as well. So I've had to sort of get up and put it into my phone straight away, because if I don't do it there and then I'll forget. And the times Wayne's turned over and said, what are you doing? Who are you messaging? I'm not messaging anybody. It's just another chapter in my book. I've got to put into my phone so that I remember. So yeah, the initial plan is to have the next one released. There's 2 books that I really want to write. So I'm kind of going to start the other one as well. But with my mediumship one, similar to the one that I've already written, that will maybe in the next 12-18 months will be released, I think. But there's another book that I want to release as well, which is in memory of a dear friend of mine. So yeah,
that's amazing. Michael, do you have any more questions to ask Craig?
I actually have one interesting question I'm just curious about, because you mentioned how being the medium, you have those that are around you that watch over you. I wonder, are you ever in a situation like you're in a crowd and you start walking up to somebody? Do your guides or loved ones on the other side say, no, steer left, don't talk to that person?
I mean, of course, the one thing to remember as well is that, my loved ones, family, friends, guides, helpers in the spirit world, they can guide me away from it. But of course, we've still got to live our lessons. And even if it's not a great lesson, we've still got to learn it, because we evolve through that. We will grow through those experiences. But yeah, there was one in particular. There was somebody that I won't say dating, but there was somebody that I was sort of seeing, if you like. We were just chatting at the time, and they came over, had let me talk about that. I've started now anyway, so I'll say that, then I'll talk about the one that Simon's just mentioned there. Anyway, so I was chatting to this lad, and anyway, he came round for a drink, and all of a sudden, there was just this feeling from my granddad, and it was, Craig, he needs to go. Okay. So, and he was feeding me like these lines and stuff, and I thought, you're a bit of a Billy BSer. So anyway, I said, right, listen, and I just made up some sort of excuse. I said, my phone went. I said, I've got to go. He said, what, at this hour? I'm like, yeah. I said, come on, I'll drop you back off. And he weren't happy, and he started not getting angry, but he got a bit agitated, and he turned around and said, he said, and on the way back, he said to me, he said, oh yeah, he said, so basically what I told you there was a pack of lies. He said, and when I don't get my own way, he said, I have a strap. He said, I have a bit of a strap on, if you like, and I tend to. And he talked about an ex at the time, or before me anyway, an ex that he was with, and he ransacked the house. He smashed up the house. I went, oh, okay, fair enough. And that's why you're going home. And he said, why? And he knew what I did. I went, because I said, let's just put it to you this way. So I've got friends in high places. And he went, is that what that phone call or the message was? I went, no. I said, they're not the people that I'm on about. So I've got friends in high places you'll never see. And it was because of that. So so that happened. But Simon, yeah, so in a nutshell, Simon had said, why don't we do some filming? And we got it all set up. We were going into central London. Simon had arranged it all. I kind of said what I'd like and where I wanted to be, and he went, "Yep, sure, no problem. I can set that up for you." So I went down there, drove or caught the train, whatever. And it was on the way down there, and I thought something's telling me different here. And I thought I need to not do this, and I don't know why. There was no big events on in London at the time. Otherwise, of course, we wouldn't have been able to have done it. And we got into Harlem. We'd gone into the town. We'd gone for a pint, and it was the day after, I think it was, that we were meant to be going into central London. And I said, and we were sat there, and he said, "I'm really excited. So I've got all the cameras ready." I went, "Dude," I went, "I don't want to." He said, "What do you mean? You don't want to?" I said, "I've just got a feeling. I don't know what it is. I've just got a bad feeling not to." And he went, "Okay, we'll go with that. No problem." So he said, "I'm a bit gutted." He said, "Are you sure?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "Right, we'll listen to that then." And I don't know I can't remember the exact date of it now, but do you remember the Cal? You probably will more than anybody, but then again, actually, it probably would have made world news at some point. So Michael, you probably would have. There were shootings in London. And not shootings. There was it shootings or was it shootings or was it that there was
a driver?
Yeah, there was a London attack.
I had a feeling it was that one.
Yeah, so there was an attack on one of the bridges in London, and somebody was run down and all that sort of thing. And I had to look up the facts and everything for it, so that I got the story right when I wrote about it. And and basically where we were going to be filming on the day was on that bridge.
Yeah.
Wow. So thank the Lord I listened, because had I have not listened, Simon turned around and said, "Well, just imagine the footage we'd have got for that. We'd have done all right." I said, "Yeah, but we might not have been able to have shared it." So, but yeah, so because of that and listening, I mean, who knows what might have happened? Would we have been actually stood there? Who knows? But we planned to be there in that area to be filming, and I just said, "Yeah, don't want to do it," and that was the reason. So yeah, I was pleased like that.
Well, that's a good lesson. Always listening to your intuition, even if it's
always
coming from somewhere else.
Always trust your gut instinct and your intuition. Yeah. Always trust it, because it'll be one thing that will never steer you wrong. And the only way that it will is if you start to question it. Don't question it. Just trust it and just go with it.
Yeah, that's totally amazing. That's a very good job that came through that day, because I remember that was. Yeah. That was pretty bad, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It was horrific.
Wow. It's a good job, Simon's the type of guy as well to say, obviously, listen to you type of thing. Because, I mean, some people might have said, well, I've set all this up type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For him to do that's pretty cool.
He was just like, okay, yeah, we'll go with that. And I think what steered it was the fact that I said, right, let's have a couple of pints. We'll go for a curry and we'll have a brandy and a cigar afterwards. I think that's what steered it. So yeah. Really good.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, I just checked. We're a little bit over time at the minute. So, if Michael, have you got any more questions at all?
I think I'm good for now.
All right. Craig, would you like to tell people where they can find you if they want to book a reading or get in touch with you?
The best place you'll find me on social media. You'll find me as Craig Morris Psychic Medium, or you've got my other profile, which you'll know it's me because I've got the tick. You'll get me on TikTok. I've got to mention TikTok, so please go over to my page on TikTok, so that at some point I can go live. I'm still getting used to TikTok, with a big thanks to Kell on that. You'll find me also on Instagram. Definitely head to Instagram. You'll know that it's me, by the way, because it's been verified. They've given me the blue tick, so you'll know it's me. But my website is all the W's, craig-morris.co.uk. And on there, you can see where I'm going to be. And I know there are people from the States watching, but I do offer Zoom events as well. So I'll be doing 15-person Zoom events. So if you want to join us on that, you can do. And I think at the time would be suitable for people in the States, because we do it of an evening for us. So it'll be an afternoon for people in the States there. Private readings, again, go via the website and use the contact us page to do that. And I think from what I can gather, I've got about 8 or 10 dates left from what I was told the other day from Claire. About 8 dates and literally 8 appointments, sorry, not dates, 8 appointments left for private readings between now and the end of the year, and then it'll be January. So, find me on all socials, and Google me, you'll find me.
Yeah, and like I say, if anybody wants, like, obviously to find out how good he is, just ask us. I've got like 2 books that I've wrote in everything he taught me of 2 readings, and like I say, he blew my mind completely. So yeah, but anyway, it's been absolutely amazing to finally get you on the show. And
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be able to chat to you. Thank you again to both you and Michael. So thank you so much.
Yeah, like I say, it's amazing. And when you see Simon again, tell him I said hello. Even though he's in the comments, but I never hear from him that often anymore. So
there you go, dude. Hint.
Get your butt up, We've still got to go on that night out at some point, the 3 of us.
Absolutely. Oh, that'll be good. That'll be good, that will.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so I'm going to let Michael close up. Michael, who we got on the show next time?
Next one, we have Kenneth Torres coming back.
Cool. Awesome. Can't wait. So that'll be in 2 weeks' time. But like I say, everybody, this was Craig Morris, and he's absolutely amazing. I can't say anything more about him. He's absolutely amazing. And just want to thank everyone for commenting and watching tonight. So hope everybody's going to have a safe weekend and stay safe. And I'll let Michael close up.
All right, here we go. Thank you for joining us at Paranormal Versus. Hope to see you on our next episode.